Coming up on The Returned.
I was not prepared for this. Within about 7 to 10 seconds, I was shot out. And all of a sudden, I'm like in what felt like this confined waiting room. And I'm looking around and I feel this fear, and something says to me,
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. The truth always follows you back. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and lightworkers from around the world. Today, we sit with David Mersky, who shares a decade of deep experiences in plant medicine, spiritual awakenings, and profound encounters beyond the physical. David, welcome to The Returned.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
So welcome. David, before we get to the heart of our conversation and your experiences, I would like to ground the audience in who you were before all of your experiences, what life looked like for you, and whether spirituality or religion played a role in your upbringing or your life.
Wow, that's a big
I
question.
know.
And I'm really glad you asked that because Um, I never saw myself as a young person in the first half of life ever having the experiences that I've ultimately had. And I never in a million years would have predicted that I would have been on the path that I'm currently on. And I say that because I want people to be open to anything that is possible for them in the world, and to be open to paths that might not have been very clear. Sometimes for a very long time, where you might come to spirituality and plant medicine experiences as someone like me who never had tried any ever before in my life. So it is really like almost a tale of two lives. I was not raised in a particularly religious background at all. I'm Jewish. I was always raised around knowing about my past, knowing about where my people came from, always had like a tie to religion, but not really a religious practice. But we did observe, family like kind of holidays and things that help tie the religion and I say tradition together. But that's really essentially as far as it went. But I always grew up as a spiritual person and interested and encouraged, actually, mostly by my mother, sort of in, I guess, what people would now say is the occult, although I don't know that that's a great term, but alternative, kind of thinking. I've been to psychics, as a child. I've had like a past life regression, different kinds of alternative therapies, I would say, just kind of different talk therapies, but with people that had specific gifts that I think they would bring to what normally would just be like a kind of a therapist conversation. So I've had those interesting experiences throughout my life, interested in the tarot and sort of like a deeper connection. I did some deeper reading even as like a teenager. I think of reading some books that probably weren't very common for a young teen to be interested in. So I would say I've always been open to that. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I practice commercial litigation, and I was in the courtroom, and I did the whole college and the school thing and the education and go to work and kind of went about life, I think, more in terms of what I thought was expected of me and really less in terms of what I really knew my path to be and what I really wanted for myself. And so it really took, but like a lot of people that come to plant medicine, I came to it through a dramatic, traumatic situation. And I think maybe it's kind of common for people to go through life changing turmoil, more or less, for them to realize maybe that there's another path, another way to experience life or to see what this whole lifetime is all about. And that ultimately brought me to plant medicine. But that's really what it was. I was running a business that I thought we was doing really well. I ended up getting sued by the government for $79 million, and that started a years long process that I ultimately emerged from successfully in a way, in that I didn't owe one penny of $79 million, and I had no negative impact as a result of the resolution. But the experience itself was so traumatic, so life changing, so jarring that it upended me in every way possible. You go from thinking one day you have a predictable, happy life, and then the next morning everything is completely different. And people that have been through these kind of things realize your life can change in a second in so many different ways. And that's really what happened to me. And ultimately, it was such a trauma living day to day through this experience. I had lost everything. I lost all material possession. I lost for a long time before anyone knew really what was going on. I suffered tremendous reputational impact, and I wasn't really able to find footing doing anything. And I was going from day to week to month to year, not only trying to find a new foothold, but trying to navigate through this $79 million lawsuit with lawyers, and trying to figure out how to pay them with money that was taken from me that I didn't have, and back and forth, and just trying to navigate a daily existence that was constantly filled with one trauma or another. And ultimately, when the case resolved, and I'm fast forwarding through, these life changing events, but over years, what I realized is when I walked away from the case, I didn't, I really assumed that the case was over because it was finished. Well, the legal case was finished, but what I was left with was anger and resentment, and the fear that I was living with day to day, because like they were threatening to prosecute me and put me in jail, and and they were serious about it. And sometimes like a year would go by and nothing would happen actually. And then I get a call from my lawyer and says, "Hey, David, I just got a call from them. I know it's been a year or it's been 2 years, but now they've looked back into the case and they're ready to come bring the case and they're going to charge you." And of course, they never did. They never did. But the threat of that was like living through terrorism, because when it kind of the threat subsides and then comes back a year later out of nowhere, seemingly, then you're back into that fight or flight. And then after a while, you're expecting that shoe to drop. And so now I'm in fight or flight every day, even when long swaths of time could go by and nothing happened. So that's kind of what I was left with. And even though the case was resolved and the threat of all that was gone, the reality of like just living in that daily trauma still resided. And then the anger of what I went through still resided. And I didn't even realize that that was happening. And then two friends of mine came to me and said, "Have you ever heard of this thing called ayahuasca?" And I said, "No." And well, it's this plant medicine and it comes from the Amazon, and people have been taking it culturally for thousands of years. And I think it's something maybe we're all, interested in looking at. And this is just a couple of friends. And I agreed to do it without even really knowing why at the time. And so that was my first introduction to plant medicine, was ayahuasca, and what ultimately became a really personal healing journey with various medicines and psychedelics and different experiences with different people. And ultimately, I was able to relieve myself of this anger, actually coming face to face with the people that were really the face of the case against me. And I saw the pain that they were going through in this ayahuasca experience. I felt their pain, and I was no longer concerned with the anger that I had, because the journey itself gave me the ability to step outside of myself and look at the people that were hurting me, but actually feel compassion for them.
Back for a moment. What a journey, because
Yeah.
I mean, you went from one side of the spectrum to a complete different side, and then everything in between, including fear and ego death,
Yeah.
correct?
All of it.
Right?
All of it. Yeah.
So For the audience, I would love for you to move us into the moment everything began to shift in that experience. If you could tell us how that doorway opened and what it was like for you and what you felt, and then what you ended up understanding after.
Yeah. So, ayahuasca is a very intentional experience, right? And it's for people that know, I mean, any psychedelic journey is not recreational. But when you go into an experience like this, you're first acknowledging that you've got things that you need to work on, things that you need to improve on. And so the big part about that, regardless of whatever anyone's process is, however you want to go about bettering yourself, and a lot of that is meditation. There's so many different modalities and yoga, so many different healing things. But the first part is you have to want it. You have to realize that I need to make a change because there are things going on that are not serving me well. But you have to be willing to do the work to be able to help yourself and improve. And that's a big commitment. And so the first part is the recognition. And so when you go into ayahuasca, you really try to set an intention. What is that thing that I really want most to help myself out of this experience? And sometimes you'll get that. Fortunately for me, I did. Other times, you'll get things that are really helpful that you didn't even know you needed help on, because we put things in our so buried inside of our subconscious that we're not really aware ourselves of the things that then ultimately manifest in our daily behaviors. And the psychedelic journeys give you a way to step outside of that and see very clearly, and see things in a much easier way than the complication that we typically bring to our own self-analysis, if you will. But so in this experience, I said, I really want to be relieved of this anger. And so I came head to head, really like almost like inches apart. And this is, like a vision that happens, but it feels so real that it's beyond explanation. And I had these two people that I had developed such hatred for, and they were just sitting right in front of me, like really like you could just reach out and touch them. And I immediately felt their pain. And I knew that what they were doing to me was coming from some motivation that really was lied outside of me, that it was something that was going on in their own lives. And I could see that, people, when they cause pain to somebody else, actually feel pain themselves. And this is like an outlet for it. And so I didn't personalize it like I would typically do, or that many of us do, when you're attacked and you feel like you have to protect yourself, and then you're angry and you want to defend, and then revenge and you want to lash out at the person that was causing you pain. But I didn't feel that in this experience. I just felt compassion. And I realized at that point that whatever I was going through, and I had been traumatized for years before this journey, that it had made me stronger. It's like a piece of steel that they finally, the steel worker or the metal worker puts into that quench, and they put it into that water, but it hardens the structure and it really changes the steel. And I feel like I realized at that point that the pain that I had gone through really strengthened me to be able to step outside of the anger and just feel compassion for the people that caused me all this pain. And it was such a gift, that feeling of strength that I can weather whatever life brings me is was so comforting at the time, because, and I would never go back to change that. I was so appreciative and had gratitude actually for the pain, because it helped not only make me who I am today, but ultimately, now looking back, really put me onto this healing path, and this journey I'm on to be able to deliver this kind of message. So there's nothing I would ever do to go back and change that. But if you asked me before, would you like to go through this painful years-long experience and give up everything you have and have nothing, in order to gain this wisdom? I would probably have said no. No, I'll just stay with the good, easy life that I have right now. But that's not the way life works. And I've learned to think more deeply than that, since, in that this may be something that I actually chose for myself to go through this experience. Because from the spirit view, before we incarnate, and this, of course, is my belief system that I've developed now, that we do pick experiences for ourselves. We pick hardships because when we come to Earth, this is a learning place. It's the school of hard knocks, and we go through hard things here because those are the things that allow us to really learn and better ourselves in the most profound ways. But a lot of that is born out of pain. And so that's the initial experience. And I was so grateful for it because I was able to put down this burden. And I knew that anger specifically is something that we impose on ourselves. And that we also have the ability to then say, well, let me just put that down. But it took ayahuasca to give me the perspective to look at myself and look at this burden I was carrying. And in that journey, it was so simple to see that this is not serving you. You don't have to do this anymore. And it's totally up to you, David. And you can put that down. And I said, okay. And symbolically, I said, okay, I'm taking this off my shoulder and I'm putting it away for a minute. I'm no longer going to carry this, and because I don't want it anymore. And that's my choice. And when I left that experience, I felt like I was floating for weeks, that I was so lightened by the gift. And here's the thing: when you talk about anger and forgiveness, it's a gift that you give yourself. It's a gift that says, you know what? You don't have to suffer this pain anymore. And whatever caused the people to do what they did to you, that's something for them and their journey to go through. But the pain that resulted from that, that's on you. And if you want to continue to carry it, you can choose that. If you want to put it down and pick another way, you can choose that. And I learned that unburdening myself from that was the best choice I could ever make. And that really, for me, started an integration of the psychedelic practices and medicines that over the next years to come would put me on, today's path and of peace. And that doesn't mean that everything in my life is gung ho and peaceful. Of course, it isn't. But I have a different way of looking at it now and looking at, well, the overall purpose of life. And so it's been a tremendous gift. Yeah.
David, I just wanted to, for the audience members that actually don't know what you've done, can
Yeah.
you give us how the experience actually starts? Kind of, and then what happens when you're in the experience? Because there's people watching that really, some of them don't know. So
Yeah.
can we give them that information?
No doubt. And there are different medicines, of course. So ayahuasca, is such a wonderful teacher, but it may not be the thing for you or for the other person. And so, yeah, I've been open to having different experiences. But ayahuasca in particular is so spiritual. And I think the difference is that, in my belief, in my limited experiences with the medicine, of course, there are people that have vastly more experience than I do. But is that there is a mother ayahuasca. When people talk about sitting with the grandmother, it's undoubtedly true, and it is undoubtedly a feminine experience. Different medicines, can have different experiences. When you get a hug from your mother or your grandmother and you feel that love, that love is distinct from your father, let's say, or a more masculine energy. And right away, and you can't really describe it in words, but what a motherly energy is like. And so that is what ayahuasca is. Now, that doesn't mean that, the experience itself is always easy, because what your mother can do. Your mother will sit you down, or your grandmother, and talk to you and say, hey, this is the way it is. But as hard as it is, that it comes from a place of love. And so when you put all of that in that context, it makes you more willing to submit to the experience. So you go, and, this was in the desert in Tucson. And we drove down. I mean, this is off the grid. And there are other ways to do ayahuasca. Of course, it comes from the Amazon. And so traditionally, you can go to Peru or Costa Rica and Mexico, and you can have these experiences. Mine was in the desert. And, it's with a trained shaman who trained for years, like in the Shipibo tradition, in the jungles where the medicine comes from. And you sit around a circle, and everyone gets a chance to come up and drink. And the ayahuasca brew is a combination of a plant of one variety and a vine of another, and they're mixed together. And the mixture itself actually allows the experience to happen. And it's brewed over a long period of time because you can't just take ayahuasca contains dimethyltryptamine, DMT, but you can't just eat the plant and the DMT in it. It will have no effect on the body. So it's very interesting, number one, how nature devised it, so that you can't accidentally just ingest this and have an unintended experience. And now, who told them that out of all the thousands of plants that they needed to combine this one and the vine of that one? That's a whole other question. But there's some, it's worth asking and investigating if you're interested. And so you drink and you go back to your little mat that you sit on. And my ceremony had about 15 people and about 5 facilitators. And then about an hour later, they call you up if you feel called, which most people do, to have a second cup. And right after the second cup, when I started to feel it really happening, and ayahuasca is a very physical process. And in addition to cleansing your spirit, it cleanses the body. And, people have to know that we are, here's again, I'm really layering on my own belief system on top of this. So I want to throw that out there generally so that without having to say every sentence, this is my opinion, this is not fact, but that, that we are spiritual beings having this physical human experience, but the human body itself is mystical and was designed divinely to be able to have the wonderful experiences of earth. But when we harbor all of these emotions and negative energies, the body feels that and harbors those energies. And so when we release these, it's not just a psychological revelation that we get. We also, the body relieves itself of its burdens and a lot of that toxicity. And the way that comes out in ayahuasca is the purge. And you'll experience that when it comes up, and it'll come out wherever it can come out. And we can all use our imagination. So you have a bucket in front of you. And oftentimes you're just going to feel this need to purge, and you're going to just throw up into that bucket. But it's not like another experience where you feel like a typical illness. You're actually getting all of this bad stuff out of you. And then you might have to go into the bathroom so it's very taxing. And, in one particular experience I'm recalling, there were temperature swings from freezing to sweating and freezing again and back and forth and back. And, you realize that it's very physical and traumatic at the same time. So you have to kind of be built up for that. You have a special diet that you call the dieta that you prepare for. So, even though weeks or like a month or 2 months before the ceremony, you're already preparing. And I believe that the ceremony itself actually starts at that time, preparing your mind, preparing your body for the journey that you are about to go into, in the near future. And so it is, although you're in a group, it is an individual journey. So you're not interacting with anybody unless, something happens where you really need some assistance. And then of course you have the facilitators there. So for people that are considering it, it is a very safe experience. It's a very loving experience. And, people are all too happy to take the bucket that you just threw up in and take it away, and they take it away from you, right? They're volunteering to do this. So, people are very committed to helping one another. And although you're going through this journey on an individual level, you're not doing it alone. And I think that that's very symbolic of life, that you might have friends and family, things are happening to you that you do have to experience by yourself, but you're not alone doing it. You have the love around you that supports you through the process. And that's what we all have in general life. Hopefully, if we're lucky enough, we all have somebody, at least, that loves us. And, that's, I think, what gets us through this very difficult experience of life, because we can't do it alone. And so typically, that's the journey, and you go through that. And It's about a 5 to 7 hour process, depending. And so it goes through the evening until the wee hours. And then hopefully, you're able to go off into a nice sleep for maybe a couple of hours. I was so excited after having been relieved from this anger that I was not able to sleep. I was just like, I've been through it, but I was ready to go. And I wanted to tell people, and I was just filled with joy. And it was just, so amazing. So that was, the first experience. And that,
In that ex
yeah,
sorry. In that experience, what is it that that you saw?
I actually saw these
Like,
people.
do you come out of your body, or does it feel like that, or is it
So
just visions?
we can talk about other experiences that were
Okay.
completely out of body. This was
Okay.
more like a vision where
Okay.
I also knew at the same time that I was where I was in the Maloka, and I was on my mat. I knew there were other people around me. But I would then able to get into a meditative state where all of that kind of gets drowned out. But there were times where you'll have to get up, or you would go to the bathroom, or so you're not like in an outer body experience for 7 hours. So it's like it comes like in waves too. And a lot of that is really worth saying. Ayahuasca is a somewhat of a musical, if that's maybe not the best term, but it's a musical experience in that the shaman and the people around you, they sing what are called the Icaros. And the Icaros are magical, um, just singing and chanting, and which is accompanied by drumming. And you know exactly that it's tied to the experience because you feel it. That there are times when there's silence and people are just going through their experience, and then the drumming and the singing will start. And as soon as it does, you feel it in your body. You feel it like electricity that's coursing through your body and out of your fingers and everywhere. And sometimes when I've had like a really hard experience, and I just felt the gratitude of just being given a short break. Like I've been through this for hours. I've been in the bathroom and I've just been happy. Just leave me here. Like if you would leave me in the street, I would be happy. Just to be left alone. Okay, I've learned my lesson. Please just leave me here. I don't care if I have no clothes on. Just leave me alone in the gutter, just so I can just take a breath and a break for a minute. And then as soon as you kind of feel that peace, all of a sudden it's boom, 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 boom. And then, you'll hear it again, and you're like, oh no, because you feel it right away. It's coming, and it's Mother Aya saying, you're not done yet. Okay, we got some more work to do here. And you're kind of in it. And after a while you welcome it because that's what the experience is about. But yeah, and I also want to say that my experience is mine, right? And it is unique to me, and so everyone will have something that's a little bit different. And then one experience is going to be different from another experience. So, this is not something that you do one time necessarily, but sometimes it's been like a few years since my last ayahuasca experience, and I've done other medicines in this time. And like you go through phases where you'll feel a calling, and now, like, I feel the calling again, and I'm setting up my next ayahuasca journey, probably in the next number of months. But so, like, it's not something that Sometimes people will do it a lot. Sometimes again years. Sometimes people would it's an individual thing, and you have to come to the medicine the way you come to it and figure out what the right journey is for you. I don't prescribe that for anybody. Because it's a personal decision. I don't recommend it. I really talk to, and the message is for people that feel the call. And if you feel a call to higher consciousness, maybe it's ayahuasca, maybe it's psilocybin, maybe it's mushrooms. It could be, there are other medicines, and I've tried a number of them, and they all have their own way of teaching. So you're in school, but there's English class, there's history class, there's math class, right? And so you learn something different from the different teachers in a different way, but it's all about learning and it's all about school. So between that, you've kind of got to pick your classes and, pick, when you want to go to school, and that part is, up to you as the individual. So, and we can get into anything you want, but I've had the the out there experiences that are more typical of, not in a way of like what an NDE might typically feel like for people?
Yeah, I would like to hear about one of your probably most profound experience that some of the audience can that would kind of be like out of body, or you met someone, or or you saw someone that I don't know how it works, but I really
Yeah.
like that you went into that because that's very helpful for people
Yeah.
to know. And it's personal. It's very
Yeah.
personal, and
It,
that's interesting as well.
depending on where you want the conversation to go or how much time I really have two that are really profound. The first was someone I was going to sit with in ayahuasca, and we were having just a conversation about a journey that was to come. We were going to schedule and talk about it, but in that conversation I brought up to him that, DMT, I know, is the active ingredient in the ayahuasca brew, but it can also be taken on its own, which is an extremely powerful experience that comes on in about 10 seconds. And so, like, there's nothing that works more powerfully than that. We make DMT, dimethyltryptamine, in our bodies. It's an endogenous compound. Why do we make it? We don't really know. There is a lot of experimentation going on. There's clinical trials going on right now, but it is a fact that we make it. So, why does it work so well with us, and what part does it play in consciousness is a very big question. And I'm the first to say I do not have the answers to it. I just have my experiences, and I can talk about that, but I don't have grand answers. I don't think as humans we're meant to have grand answers. I think a lot of this experience is because of our limitation. But let's, I don't want to get too far afield. He said to me, I have DMT. You can experience it tonight if you want to. And I said, oh my God, I was not prepared for this. But, when the opportunity comes, I said yes. And so literally he said, okay, we're going to help you. Generally, you need some assistance. And you hold this smoke in, and it's a very strong vapor. It's very hard on the lungs. And you hold it in, and within about, I would say, 7 to 10 seconds, I was shot out, like you would typically hear, like just shot out. And all of a sudden, I'm like in what felt like this confined, like a waiting room almost. And there's colors that are coming that are so bright, that colors that I can't even describe. We don't have the words to describe them. I think colors that I can't say that I've actually ever seen before. And, from a scientific standpoint, we are only able with our human eyes to see a very, very small spectrum of color. And so we can't relate to things that we haven't seen before. So it's a very difficult experience because you're seeing things and trying to process information that you have no context for. And so immediately, as I was kind of in this room, um, I I felt a little fear, which is normal. This is also part of the psychedelic process. We have our monkey minds in us, and we have this need to hold on to security, and anything that threatens that security, our natural fear mechanisms kick in and say, no, I don't think we want any of this. And, so there is a bit of process about learning how to overcome this, and learning that that's just part of, what our bodies, how we react. And that just comes with a little bit of practice. I'm shot out, and all of a sudden I'm looking around, and I feel this fear. And then something says to me, well, would you feel better if I showed you this? And it was like almost like a little room. And I felt better about being in this room because I could relate to it. It had like what looked like walls to me. And I just felt like it was a structure. But immediately I turned like to my left, and I'm looking off to the side, and I realized that this structure was an illusion. There was really nothing there. And I just felt like I was in deep space. And immediately, the fear, though, changed, and I come to a place where I could only describe as heaven. And I say it because I feel it just unbounded love. And I feel like I was just a newborn baby in its mother's arms, feeling nothing but unbounded bliss and just happiness. And I realized two things at once. Number one was, this is the best experience that is possible. I don't know what this is, but I don't want to go back to the place I just left, meaning like my life. This is the place that I want to be. This is unbelievable. And uh, and the peace is beyond explanation. And and I and what surprised me though, and this is when I talk about it, when I tell people, is that I know this place. And I'm talking to myself saying, how do I know this place? Because I've never been here, but I have been here. And I know that I come from here. And I know that I'll be going back to here. But at the same time, I'm having this conversation like any of us would saying, but how do I know this? There's no reason that I should know this. And I feel such excitement in this bliss that I think to myself, I have to tell people about this. And as soon as I said that, a voice came to me and said, this is not for you to be able to tell. This is for you to experience. And so if you could just sit back and just have this experience, I knew that that was the purpose. And so it's very difficult to explain what happens from one second to the next because it's all a bit of like a whoosh, kind of like a dream also at the same time, where there's clarity, but then there's whoosh, and then you go to another state. And so I remember coming back into the room, and I remember the I had, the person who was serving it to me and another friend there who took me, and I was looking at them in the room, but I realized I was looking at them not through my eyes, and I couldn't now process this experience. I was just seeing them, and how do I see them? And then little by little, I come back into the room, and then all of a sudden I'm back. And the first question was, how long was I gone for? And because you have no idea, just no idea about time. This all happens outside of time. And you're back into your body, and now I'm back into time. And now it becomes difficult to hold on to the concept that was so natural because it's not natural for us as we're human. So we have to understand that there are different parts of us, and that there is this soul being part of us that we don't have the ability to tap into 24 hours a day. But it's okay when the one thing I've taken from all of my journeys is that while I can't really tap into it, I don't have any what I call special gifts or abilities, but we all have these gifts and abilities. And at the right time, under the right conditions, you can experience them. And so, although that's not part of my daily life, I know that it is with me. And so I do try to take it with me. And that's like a big lesson that I try to let people know about is don't get bogged down in the monotony of the meaningless stuff every day. Find the glory in every little moment because it is there. All these little things, they are there. So let's have appreciation for that. And, realize that, when you're getting bogged down that, well, we are these angelic beings. And I don't have the answers to it, but I know I'm more than this, and I know I'm never going to die. So I don't really have to know much more than that because since that day, I have a security and a peace in me because I know I'm going to be fine. And I know that when I leave, it's going to be great because I've been there before. Excuse me.
What a
So,
real experience. It
uh,
sounds like like when I listen to it, aside from the fear of it, it sounds like you were experiencing something that was almost more real than our physical world.
I say it's undoubtedly more real, right? And that we really do have to buy into this illusion of the 3D life that we live in, every day. Because, but the grand, magic of this game of life is that you're born into it specifically not knowing. Now, I believe that we decide this on our own, that we have, and this leads into another out of body experience with mushrooms that I've had, but we have a spirit team. We have people around us. We have a whole support structure. And I've seen that. And that has also changed my mind. So we can interact with this sort of spirit side of us while we're still here, and it is frustrating. But if the point is this, if we knew all of the lessons, then what would be the purpose of the life? Because if you knew everything, we wouldn't be here to learn, because there would be nothing left to learn. So I think this amnesia is a necessary part of it, that this forgetting is absolutely necessary to our learning, because the point of the game is to overcome the limitation of life and the 3D environment, and realize that we are these expansive soul beings, and that we are here for a purpose, which is basically to help each other and basically to put out love. Because this is a place where we can take love and we can give it and we can share it. And this frequency and vibration of love is all that this crazy existence is about. If I could say that the only thing I actually know is that it is love. And we complicate it by doing all the things we do, and we go into life and we have jobs and we've got to make money, and these are all necessary, and we're in this material world, and you do have to play the material game. Okay, so I'm not saying that, because you do, and let's play it well if you can. And so if you're able to do well and you can get nice things because you work really hard, beautiful. You've really taken advantage of this wonderful opportunity called life. But we all know that if you really excel in the material, you're not taking it, right? No one's figured that out yet. And you get to the end of your life and you realize that none of that all really matters too much. So it's great to have the things, it's great to experience them. But if you can do those things and experience them, and but with this understanding now that it's all really fleeting, and that we're unbounded, that we're going to go on forever, then, you know, then these things become less and less important. And that's just, what you learn through, the whole general life experience.
You're exactly right. Uh, and that's very much very well said, actually. And I know that it's really hard because we're in a place where ego is very strong. We're taught certain ways, you know. And I often, and this is kind of aside from what you said, but I quite often have thoughts and do research, just little bits of research of what would have happened if we were all raised this way. Not like go do plant medicine every day or every other day, but I mean, what if we changed the whole way life was supposed to be played?
And I
What
think,
would it be like? I think that
well,
something along the way has happened. Even though this is a school, they say, of learning, I truly sometimes don't believe that we were supposed to be so thick and deep into the muck of it.
so people always say, if there is a God, then why does this child suffer? Why does this child have illness? Why are all these bad things happen? And it doesn't make sense. And my response to that is, why doesn't it make sense? The fact that there is the universe, that let's say that there is a God, or whatever your belief system is, that there's something that is universal that connects us as spirits. And that doesn't have to be based in any particular religion, although obviously that's how a lot of people come to spirituality. Um, but I know that you can be a religious person, and that doesn't prevent you from doing any of the alternative plant medicines, and that we're all the religions at the core are really trying to get at the same things. Right. So the point of this is to learn that the differences about us are so much less than we think they are, and the understanding that we're all the same, and that when you go out, that if you help someone in the world today, you're helping yourself, because there's nothing you can do than be of service to somebody else, because inside each of us is the entire universe, that we are God in this very little way, this one little point of light, but inside of it is this fractal nature of reality, that within the whole big thing, within the tiniest little part, contains the all. And, that's something that I think only the plant medicine experience could have given me, because I would have had no other way to relate to it. But ultimately we're the same and we are here for each other. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the power and the free will to make bad decisions and to muck it up and to screw it up and to put out bad things and bad vibration and violence and all the things that happen. That doesn't mean that there's not a God. That just means that we haven't figured it out yet, but we can choose another path. And I think that part of the reason that I'm on this journey is that I was called to bring this message out to people. This message is not my message. I have nothing to do with the message. And myself, I'm nobody, right? I am nobody special in this, except that in that little way, as I'm describing to you, I'm also God, right? And so I want people to think about that as you're going to work and you're punching your 9 to 5 clock and you think life is miserable, is that people forget that inside of you, you're God. And you got to realize that and come to it in any way that you can. And this is one way that may be able to open up that door. But for people to, I think the worst thing is for people not to, they buy into the illusion and forget that they're God. And I know people, when they encounter these entities in like a DMT experience or other psychedelics, sometimes they'll see these what they call like, the DMT elves, which are very common. They're very cartoonish, they're very playful, and they laugh at you. And one person was telling a similar story, and they're like, "Well, why are you laughing at me?" And it's like, "We're laughing at you because you think this is real." And so, it is just part of the grand illusion and the humor. Like we might as well just take humor in it, because I think as soon as we pass, you're going to wake up from a dream and you're going to realize that this whole life that you spent all this time worrying and all this time, this and that and all the problems that you were bogged down in, you realize, oh my goodness, I didn't have to do any of that. And, of course, it's easy when you're on the other side when you have that perspective. But the other part about not being alone is a mushroom journey that I had where I saw my spirit team. I was in like one of those old fashioned like English, like a rotunda, where like the teacher would be at the bottom and you would have like the big round and there, levels of like stadium seating where people would go and like kind of like in a medical school, like where they like doctors when they were learning. It was like that. But I was at the bottom and it was like theater seating, exactly. And I looked up and I noticed, and they weren't people, but they were energies. They were energies that were as real as people, but they just didn't have the physical form. But they were distinct entities, and there were a whole bunch of them. And at the time, I was saying, life is so hard. And I felt them right at the back, and they were basically going like this, and they were holding their hands up, and they were just giving me like this power, and they were just, wishing all this goodness on me. And then the voice came to me and said, "We know it's hard, but that's what it's supposed to be. But we're here for you, and just keep going. I mean, that's it. Just keep going." And, I realized from that moment that it doesn't really matter how successful I am or where I end up. But the effort is important. If you can just one foot in front of the other, no matter what's going on today, just take a little step, just take one more. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter where you get to. So don't even worry about that anymore. Just keep moving, man. And if you can just do that, you've got it. Because we're so bogged down in, well, I don't have this and this guy's got that and he got the new car and the house and all of that. It's irrelevant. It's just, can you better yourself? What can you work on today? Can you love someone a little more? And then the other thing that's most important is, can you love yourself? Have you loved yourself today? Because that was very difficult for me because I'm always about achieving and the next thing and the next thing. But when do you sit down and say, man, you did a really good job today? And I do this now. I pat myself on the back and I'm like, David, good job today, buddy. You did a good job today. And feel good about yourself because self-love is so powerful. And we realize we can be really hard on ourselves and not realize that we can be easier on other people. And we're so mean to ourselves sometimes. And so like we have to realize that we deserve the love too that we want to give, and you give it to yourself. And then that puts you in a position where that is magnetic, and the energy that emanates from you when you're in that vibration of love will permeate all through reality, and good things will happen just sitting in that vibration.
I love, absolutely could not agree more. Could not agree more. Great message you brought there. One thing, you talked about the DMT and witnessing what you described as maybe being heaven. Now, aside from that, what why do you think we are here? And here being like I know that you say it's a school, but why are we here? Why don't we remember? And where is all of these places? Where is the in between, the black void, hell, heaven? Where are those things in your opinion?
First of all, they're not physical places, and they may, take on physical attributes where people will say, like, I went and it looked like there are mountains and there are streams and there are fields, and that very well may be. And so many of these experiences I have not experienced myself. But certainly they exist interdimensionally. I want to be very clear to say that I don't know. I know that they're there. I know that, that we are bought into this belief that we're this conscious being and that it's in our brains, and that once you die, well, where does that go? Now, there's a sort of a tension there because, well, people can't really conceptualize this, but maybe they've been brought up in religion and they've heard of heaven and they have some belief system. Well, then where do you think we go? If it's certainly not here and the body is sitting here, but now where are you? And I can only say that it is another existence where, at least at first blush, at least what we're allowed to see is that when I see it, I still feel like I'm me. So I haven't, dissolved into the consciousness to the point where David no longer exists. David is completely intact, 100%, but I just don't have a body anymore. And that's a little strange, I will grant you. But you're talking to people, but you're not using words, but you have an immediate understanding. And so there are things, there's just levels of communication and existence that exist beyond our ability to see. What might make it easier without having an answer is that, we really, it's called like the Umwelt. Like, we're born as humans, but we have very limited senses. But we're not upset that we can only see this very small sliver of the light spectrum. I mean, there's all kinds of things we don't see. We know now that there are X-rays and gamma rays and all these different things that we don't see. And there are things that we don't hear because our hearing is also very limited. We don't feel that there's a limitation, though. We're not upset because we've never known anything else, So you don't feel the limitation because you feel like this is all that you're supposed to know. And so you accept it. We're not upset that we can't hear like a dog, or that we can't see like a snake, and we can't see infrared, and that if it's dark out, we're totally blind. But we don't feel like that's something that's lacking in us. We just accept that that's part of our humanity. So whatever the purpose is, I think this human structure, and I think it is um, a divinely designed system, this human body, and it serves us very well for the purpose, while we're here. And I really stopped trying to find all of the answers because I accept that it's okay that we don't know. And so I'm not on this journey for more and more and more information. Although I get more wisdom and you have more experiences, but the goal is not to understand it. The goal is to really understand that it's okay that I don't know, because I know that I'm part of something bigger. And again, it's if you really knew all of this wisdom, then it would be easy for you. And with ease, you don't get the this. need to move and this need to learn and this need to change. You know, how do you go through in a timeless environment? How do you understand time? How do you understand patience? How do you understand hard work and toil and accomplishment? If everything that you wanted, you were able to get in a split second, then where does all that learning come from? Where do you get the wisdom come from? And you realize that really it only comes from this this kind of limitation, whether it's limitation of it that's physical, whether it's all kinds of pain or psychological trauma. They're obstacles that we need to overcome, and that's what I think we set up for ourselves, like an obstacle course. And you say, I think we've been here doing this many, many times. And that you travel into this physical realm with with like spirit teams, with like, and that you've shared relationships with your family, but in different ways, where your mother might have been your daughter, or your friend was your brother, and you try things out and you have soul contracts and you say, well, let's try it this time. Let's change it up this time and let's see what we learn. And it's a game of figuring it out. And we're all playing these parts without realizing that we've agreed to this, you know, in advance.
Okay.
That's what
So
I,
if we're doing that, and just let's talk about what you just said there, that your opinion. Um, okay, so we're coming here, we're playing this game where we're all these different people and these different lifetimes. What's the prize?
okay, that's a great question. So what I believe again is that the prize ultimately is that we all realize that we're not individuals. Like if you could tell me, like, take the world where you want it to go, like if we fast forward and we really figure out the game, ultimately, the ultimate game is to realize that you and I are connected. We're all directly connected. We come from this one source, and it's a source of love. And that what we're here to do is to make everyone's life filled with this love and peace and prosperity. That if that was our goal, we could bring this about. And the goal ultimately, and when you tie this back into the religious setting, this may be the return of the Christ consciousness. So when people talk about Jesus, let's say, for example, I think one theory is, excuse me, that Jesus was just one of many spiritual beings that came to earth to try to help us on to this path. And we've not been successful at it. Jesus may not have been fully human. Jesus may have been an incarnation that was human, but also part divine. And that may not even be a religious, that may not have religious meaning in the typical sense of Christianity. Now we start to talk about, who are we? Well, maybe we are the product of other species and evolving. I think it's clear that we've been tampered with, and that you know, this missing link of evolution is a direct result of DNA tampering, and that we've been changed, and that's why we are so advanced. That's why there are no other species on Earth that are as advanced as us. That we can essentially have this domination of the world, if you will, with our minds. We're able to produce things, and you know, we were at one point just riding horseback 100+ years ago, and now we're in space. And so we have this unbounded capacity to expand well beyond our physicality. And I think that's what we're doing. I think AI is also going to have profound impact in massive transformation in our technological advancements. And we are overcoming slowly this physical limitation of our bodies. And I think once we figure out really who we are, that we're not limited to our physical nature, and that we are spiritual beings, and that the grand purpose is to spread this source of love to humanity and to the world, and to make sure we get up every morning with the purpose of trying to help each other, that's exactly when we might see this Christ consciousness, if you will, return. And maybe at that point is when we have what people often refer to as ascension.
Love
That's the
that. I
working
love
thought.
that. So I love that. I love that thought. I love the whole thing. It's like music to my ears. Now, what do you feel? you kind of answered this question, but maybe a little bit more. I'm just going to ask it anyways. What do you feel that these kinds of experiences, not even just DMT, plant medicine, but also out of body, NDE, Kundalini awakenings, what do they reveal about the nature of reality or even our soul?
It's certainly clear to me that there are many different planes of existence, and that it's unbounded. Like, you can continue to go deeper and continue to go deeper. Um, you know, again, why are we here having this limitation if it's not for some grand, some bigger purpose? But I think what we're doing is we are essentially having this school experience that we take back, that helps feed our greater soul. And that we have a soul mission that we only can see one little tiny part of right now as this exact present human incarnation. But I think from another perspective, we realize that we've probably done this 1,000 times, or who knows how many times. And each time we're learning a little bit more and a little bit more, and we're overcoming the limitations, and that we're bettering ourselves, and that this is all part of just a grand, experience. I don't know if there's an answer to it. I mean, let's accept the fact that maybe there isn't an answer. People can become really consumed with this matrix, or simulation experience, and it can become very depressing for people to think that, well, if none of this is real, then it has no meaning. And my answer to that is, this is real because you're having a real experience. It might not be the full definition of who you are, but it certainly is real, and it certainly is magnificent. And so I don't want anyone to take away. I'm glad you asked this, because it's not to escape. And this is not to, let me have this experience so I can transcend this earth. It's to realize that who I am, but that I now have a bigger opportunity with a greater understanding to improve this earth, to improve myself, and to improve the experience for everyone around me. And that's it. I don't need to know or understand the deeper levels of what is probably outside of my ability to ever comprehend. But what I do know is that if I can be happier, and if I can make this life, as we're spinning and flying through this universe on this rock together, if I can make it better for you and you can make it better for me, that's the answer. I think that's all we really need to be, really. Yeah.
So, what it brings to me, I know this is my mind's just going now. So, we talk about that. I actually agree with that. So, if we're here, we're learning, we're playing a game, right? And and we're learning each lifetime that we come here. So then my brain goes, well, then why are all these people having NDEs? Why are plant awakenings happening? What are these awakenings for if we're humans here, learning every lifetime? And if I believe, because I believe that these people that have these awakenings are here to help light the path for others, right? So if
Yeah.
I believe that, then do you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm
Yeah,
not even understanding what I'm
you'll
trying to
hear
say.
people, when people talk about NDEs frequently, where they've been through like a trauma, they fell off a mountain, or, like something really bad. They were in a horrific accident, and they'll describe how they, kind of met, these entities, or met like a guide, and were told, listen, you have a choice. You don't have to go back, but you can go back, or you have more work to do in this plan that you've set out for yourself. And oftentimes people will say, listen, I really don't want to go back there, and I certainly don't want to go back to that pain, but there is something deep inside of me that realizes there is something more. And so you understand that the experience itself and the lessons to learn are far more important than the temporary pain that you're experiencing. And the knowing in that situation is what drives people to decide and tell the spirit guide, no, I think I'll go back because I have family there, because I have people that love me. I have people that still count on me, and I'm going to go back. And they'll report, they'll say, well, this is going to take time. You're going to go through a lot of healing. You're going to feel this pain, but there's a reason for it. And they realize in that moment, it's okay because I know where I'm ultimately going to go. So I will go back and have this temporary pain for the greater good. And it's the reason that we incarnate in the first place. Because when picture it, if you're in unbounded, timeless existence where everything is possible, there's again, you don't get to experience the beauty of the limitation. The beauty of the limitation is I can have an apple. I can play with my dog. You can, feel your pet. You can feel that love that exists. That's just like indescribable. You can go for a walk. You can eat beautiful foods. You have physical touch. You have physical pleasures of all kinds, right? These are the things that you don't get to experience, I think. And what I talk about is as limited as this journey, this physical journey is, it's a vacation for the soul. This is a chance for the soul to say, yeah, we're going to get to go do this fun thing. We're going to this is Disneyland for the soul. We're going to get to do this and that. And we're these wonderful rides and we're going to have these experiences. I think in the soul, from the soul perspective, there is no good and bad. Right? It's all about experience. And if you could tell the soul, we could fill you up with all these experiences. At the human level, you probably wouldn't want to have the so-called bad ones. But from the soul perspective, there is none of that. This is all wonderful experience. Look at the lessons you've learned. I've just described to you all of these powerful, life-changing lessons I have learned that came from pain. And so from the soul's perspective, yeah, this is great. Let's have it all. The good, the bad, the this, because it doesn't really have that meaning. It's all learning. It's all experience that we can then take on to the next experience. And I do believe that when we get to the point where we've advanced, where there's nothing left for us to learn here, we'll stop coming here and we'll go on to another journey, whatever that is. But it's boundless and it's timeless and it's been going on from time immemorial, and it's been going on this planet for a long time. And we might have screwed it up to the point where we might have, as a human civilization, been here before and ended it and come back. And, we're trying to uncover the mysteries of that. And this is a really interesting thing to pursue, but I don't know that that we need to figure that all out again. Is just, this little piece of like, let's just keep bettering ourselves and making it, and I think ultimately maybe the earth, moves into itself into another place where humanity and everything that's living here is living in a much more harmonious way than we are now, where we're against each other. We're trying to take this from us. And if I have more, you have less. And the same goes for the earth. We're taking all of these resources from the earth. What are we replacing from the earth that is going to allow this to continue for other people to experience? And we have to ensure that it remains here, for others, and maybe for that matter, for ourselves to come back to. So we're just tied together in every way you can imagine. I think we get these little hints. I think this comes from, consciousness, and that we need, we need some help, because the illusion is so strong that if we didn't have these clues, then we would never figure it. I think the point is to get out of the game, ultimately. And when we're all good enough and we're sharing the love that I've been now repeatedly talking about, there will be a point where, okay, the game is now we figured the game out, and maybe we go on to another game. I don't know, but that, we're getting these little hints now that are dropped to us, and they come to us through individuals who have NDEs and other experiences where we say, look, I don't really know the full answer to this, but I know that this is a place where you can learn something from. This will give you something to make you happier, and ultimately make us as a collective happier. And so I've had my little experience, you have yours, and now I'm on a mission, because I think that was predetermined also. I've heard someone recently refer to Mother Ayahuasca has sensed the change in the earth and has decided to leave the jungle. because I didn't do ayahuasca in the jungle where it traditionally comes from. Now people are having ayahuasca experiences everywhere. And throughout the United States and other countries, people can find an experience right near them in their own neighborhoods very frequently. People that are trained. So people have gone down to the jungle and learned. Now they're coming back. Mother Ayahuasca is coming out. And we're all trying to spread this message, and I think that we are at this time of there's a psychedelic renaissance going on, unquestionably, and you're seeing laws now that have been so against psychedelics for so long are changing. This is not a coincidence. I am coming and sharing this message at a time that is becoming easier and easier now. If I had been doing this over the last 50 years, it'd be like knocking on a door that was just not yet ready to open. And we're still early on in the process. But if someone like me, who's never had experience in plant medicines, I had never done a psychedelic compound in my life until I was 45. Well, what is the reason that I at 45 had this experience? And now I'm on here talking to you saying, like, I don't even know how I got here because I never could have picked this life path out for myself. I think this is not only part of my purpose, but it's part of the general purpose of humanity, that we're all now coming along at this time to figure it out. And, I'm just doing my little part.
You know what it makes me think? This is where it makes me think. It makes me think that we're returning. You're needing to return to who you truly are. And another thing it makes me think is that we need to be reminded that we are love.
Yeah,
That love, I feel, is all that matters. And somewhere along the lines, we may have forgotten that. And
sure.
so some of us are waking up and in hopes to bring people back to that true self, that true
Yeah.
essence of themselves, you
Yes.
know? Maybe
Yes.
that's what we're forgetting is
Yeah.
love.
And I'm just a servant in that process, right? Just a messenger, right? As I said before, I'm not the message, right? But I've seen, and if you look at Jesus, and I keep coming back because I could talk about other spiritual, but if you just generalize that, Jesus, what did he say? He said, I am the way, and the kingdom of God is within you, right? He wasn't looking in that sense for a church. He was saying, you are also Christ. You can be like me because I know the way, and you have the choice to do it because you have that within you. And if you can make that return, that's the goal of the game. And so here we are trying to do that.
David, exactly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I love that. So this is I know you did not die, but you did.
Yeah.
Okay? The old you died,
Correct.
right?
Right. That's
So
absolutely.
we're here, but I'm asking you now, do you fear death?
No. Oh, not at all.
Is there a
And
reason why?
I mean, I think I talked about in the experience that I had where I realized I come from this place and I will be going back to this place. I will be making that return. And so whenever that is, and I hope it's not for a long time, because I want to milk every amount of positivity and juice out of this life, because I'm here right now. That's the point of it. It's not to go back where I know it's really the good stuff is, because I'm here for a purpose. And so I don't want to short circuit that. I want to milk everything I can out of it. And I want to help as many people come to this understanding as I can while I'm here. But when the time comes, I know it's going to be nothing more than waking up from a dream and saying, probably to my spirit team, who I've also had the joy of seeing for just a brief moment, that, hey, I'm back. And because people talk about the NDEs, they're welcomed back. Right. So we've all had different experiences and different modalities, but we kind of gone to similarly the same places and talking about the same stuff, and it's all positive. So there's nothing to be afraid of. Fear is just a human emotion, because what's out there for us and what's waiting for us on the other side is absolutely magnificent. So it's a celebration once you get back there. So nothing to fear.
So right, David.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to take a moment to tell you or to say to you that, the life that you have lived, the loss that you have had, the death that you have had. So you lost everything. You had an unimaginable amount of debt that, oh my goodness, that would be enough to give me a heart attack. I'm sure of it. That's huge, to go through life and finally get to this. You have really returned to yourself, haven't you?
Believe I have. It's a process,
Yeah.
though. Let me say that. Okay, I've got a
Yeah.
lot of work to do, and it's an ongoing thing. It's never going to be finished, but at least I kind of, I'm on that, I'm on the road, you know, and I know that I can stay on this road. And when I do some things that aren't great, I know how to fix them now a little better than I did, and so that just gives me the hope to keep moving.
And you will.
Yeah.
Now, can you share more about your work if you have services, any content, platforms, or any published works that you have, and where people can find and connect with you?
So the beauty of all this is that I've over the last, let's say maybe 7 years, I've been able to put together my personal journey into my professional work. And so again, I'm an attorney by trade. I had the opportunity to take over a company called Sabonic, which is cannabis in reverse, which is a small microcap public company, publicly traded. So you can go buy our stock if you want. So it's a real platform for people that are interested to be able to participate. And you can buy like this little part of a company if you're interested, if you like the things we're doing, if you like the things that I'm talking about. And our ticker is SNNC. And you can go spend just a few bucks if you want, and you can go buy a couple of shares, whatever that is. As a company, we are organizing plant medicine retreats in South and Central America now, international experiences. We're doing some things domestically too, so we can open experiences to people that would find it more difficult or it's expensive to go internationally. But we're constantly developing these things and also products that we're going to be bringing to market that people can then utilize in the natural health regimen. So, and what I've done is I talk about this on my channel. I don't talk about anything in my life personally. I never have, but I do talk about everything in great detail about my plant medicine and psychedelic journeys on my channel called the Meru Sky, which is MERU Sky. And there's an interesting story about the naming of that channel, which came out of someone else's psychedelic journey that they relayed to me. But basically, the meaning of that is that I'm a messenger and that I'm talking about these experiences so that people can listen to them, find out, to learn about what they're like, and most importantly, what lessons I have learned and what it has taught me, and then to decide for themselves if they're interested in pursuing their own expanded consciousness. There's a way to do that. And so I open that doorway for communication to be able to learn and figure out to get people onto their own journey.
Sounds wonderful. And I will have all that information in the description box below. So everyone, David, returns with a truth. What truth did you return with that you want humanity to know right now?
We've talked about it, I think, throughout this hour or so, right? And it is love. It's just that simple, and I don't want to complicate it with anything other than that. I think the only thing in this illusion that is real is love, and when you feel that, when you feel this unbounded love for another person, and for people in general, that is the frequency that drives our humanity and our existence, and it's the only thing that matters. And so, whatever that feeling is to you, however you feel called to display that more in your life to other people and again to yourself, keep coming back to that. Don't be distracted because that's all that matters. When we transcend this earth and this existence, all that we take with us and all that we leave behind is love.
David, I want to thank you so very much from my heart to yours for bringing yourself on here today and talking so openly and freely about your journey because these conversations, I feel, invite people in to look beyond what they think they know. and to explore something deeper within themselves. And thank you so very much for being here and bringing your light, your truth to the return today.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you so much again for giving me the opportunity.
And to the audience, these experiences, they invite us to question what we believe is real. And maybe that's the point, not to have all the answers, but to stay open to the possibility that there is more. So thank you for watching. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.